Right, hello and welcome back to the channel. Today, in our third of four athletics action overviews, we're going to be looking at the shove action. Shove is an athletics action that targets the target's 42 DC and allows you, as one might guess, to shove your target back 5 feet on a success or 10 feet on a critical success. In addition, as part of the shove action, you can stride after your opponent, moving in the same direction and the same distance, basically chasing after your opponent as you shove them to make sure you're still adjacent to them. So shove is obviously useful in being able to manually position your enemies where you want them to go. It's a little unclear what shove away means. Obviously, you can shove them directly away from you, but it's kind of up to GM Fiat whether or not you can shove creatures to your left or to your right, or even use shove to, for example, pull them towards you. However, I don't personally believe that any of being able to shove in multiple directions is like game breaking or anything, and it certainly adds to the shove's utility if you allow a player to use shove to move creatures side to side. Of course, shoving becomes much more useful if there's some kind of terrain hazard that you can shove people into, whether that be a wall of fire that your wizards put up, or even a handy cliff face that you happen to be battling nearby. If you can shove your opponents into those terrain hazards, it can deal quite a bit of damage to them, or possibly take them out of the fight entirely. Do note that by default, shoving your opponents into walls isn't going to do anything other than halt their movement. By default, they are not going to take any additional damage by being shoved into a wall. Of course, there are ways around that, most of which are feats that you can take, so let's get into those now. Starting with a feat we've actually covered before, Inventive Offensive for the Gnome Ancestry. This is going to come up quite a bit, where shove and trip feats actually have a lot of overlap, where the feat can be used to either shove or trip, or benefits from shoving or tripping. So I'm probably going to move a little more quickly through those. If you want a slightly deeper look into that, you can check the Trip Athletics video that I uploaded a few weeks ago. But Inventive Offensive for the Gnome allows you, for 3 actions, to give your weapon the shove trait amongst other options, which lasts until the weapon deals damage with a successful hit. And the other ancestry feat coming from grapple, which is an uncommon ancestry, at level 9 get Ricocheting Leap, which allows you to wall jump off of creatures larger than you, and in addition, make shove attempts against those creatures as a free action. Moving on now to the class feats, and starting with Barbarian, we get Knockback at level 10, which allows us, if we have made a successful strike, to spend an action and automatically gain a successful shove on the opponent we just struck. This leads to Awesome Blow at level 14, which allows us, when we use Knockback, to also make an athletics check to attempt to trip our target. Note that no matter what we take, even if we crit fail this athletics check, we still get the normal effect of Knockback, so there's still that standard shove. And in addition, this allows us to actually critically succeed that shove and trip attempt, which previously with normal Knockback, we were stuck with only normal succeeding. And finally, a level 12 Balancing Sweep allows us to shove up to 3 adjacent foes with the same multiple attack penalty. Next, the Fighter, starting at level 2 with Aggressive Block. After we use a shield block to block an opponent's attack, we can automatically shove them back 5 feet, or force them to become flat-footed. Note that neither of these effects require any skill check on our part, they are both automatic actions that happen. Next, also at level 2, we have Brutish Shove, which is a press attack, but allows us, if we hit the target with this press action, to automatically shove it, pushing the opponent back 5 feet. And taking either of these feats also qualifies you for Powerful Shove at level 4, which allows you to use those feats against creatures up to 2 sizes larger than you, basically replicating Titan Wrestler's effect. However, it also has the additional benefit of if you shove something into a solid object, it takes damage equal to your strength modifier. And finally, Fleeing Shove at level 12 improves the effects of both of the feats that can be qualified to take it for, allowing you to shove farther and have a little more control of what happens when you use Aggressive Block. Next, we have the monk, which gets knockback strike at level 10, which allows you to make an unarmed strike, and if you hit, attempt to shove the target and ignore the multiple attack penalty increase until after the shove resolves. And they have at level 12 improved knockback, which allows you to increase the distance of your shove whenever you shove creatures, and also deal bludgeoning damage to them whenever they get shoved into an obstacle. And finally, we have the rogue with shove down level 6, which allows you for a free action to trip the target after a shove, and for the summoner level 10 pushing attack, which allows one of your eidolons to gain the push action, which is basically an automatic shove after a successful strike. I also want to give a quick shout out to the Disengraph's Conscious Mind from the Psychic, which grants you the Mage Hand cantrip, and if you amp that cantrip, allows you to make shove actions using your Mage Hand with your spell attack roll instead of athletics checks. Notably, this is a shove action, so it should trigger effects that rely on you making shove actions. For example, that rogue feat shove down, if you make a shove action with your mage hand, technically that will trigger shove down and you should be able to trip as a free action following that. Of course, a lot of this is up to DM Fiat, and if you're 30 feet away using your mage hand to shove people, it's a little hard to justify why you're suddenly able to trip them afterwards, but it is something I think that is worth pointing out. It's kind of an interesting alternative to the more physical, martial focused aspects of normal shoving. Now moving on to the archetypes, starting with the Mauler, which at level 6 gets Clear the Way, which allows you for 2 actions to attempt to shove up to 5 creatures which are adjacent to you, then stride up to half your speed. Note that this does not ignore multiple attack penalties, so you're pretty quickly going to be rolling these shoves at -10. However, it is still 5 actions for the price of 2, so it is quite a bit of free action economy that you're gaining. Maulers also get Shoving Sweep at level 8, which allows you to shove as a reaction in response to someone leaving a square in your reach. And Unbalancing Sweep at level 14 has the Barbarian feat, which allows you to shove up to 3 adjacent foes for 3 actions at the same multiple attack penalty. The other archetype which gives bonus to shoves is Staff Acrobat. And notably about this is all of the feats in Staff Acrobat actually apply to both shoving and tripping. So I have covered all of these before in my tripping video, which once again, if you want to look at that, is going to be linked in the description. So I'm probably going to move through these explanations a little bit more quickly. So straight away at level 2, the dedication immediately allows you to shove even if your hands are full wielding your staff. Bullying Staff at level 4 allows you to shove creatures up to 2 sizes larger than you, or 3 sizes larger if you have Master Proficiency. Staff Sweep 6 allows you to shove up to 2 adjacent foes at once. And Leaving Strike at level 8 allows you to strike an opponent and make them flat-footed and give them a -2 circumstance for their DC against shoves until the start of your next turn. Now, Leaving Strike could be used to help set up yourself. However, since it's an attack action and a press trait, it's going to be pretty hard for you to take full advantage of this. It's going to be much more valuable for your allies who are also attempting to shove, trip, or tumble through your opponents. And finally, Pivot Strike at level 14 allows you to leap, then strike, and then shove your opponent, all for 2 actions. Now that is all for the feats that cover shoving. However, there's one more thing I want to mention, which is the divine spell, Mantle of Heaven Slopes. It's an uncommon level 6 spell, which allows you to take 2 of these effects and gain the benefits of those choices for a minute. The one I specifically want to call out is Iotisa's Verdict, which allows you, whenever you succeed a strike as a free action, to shove the creature you hit. Now this will increase your multiple attack penalty as normal. However, a free shove on every single successful strike is pretty powerful. And note that this doesn't necessarily need to be strikes on your turn. If you have attack of opportunity and you manage to hit someone as an attack of opportunity, Mantles of Heaven Slopes will allow you as a free action to shove that creature after you hit them. So as always, I like to end these videos off with a sample build, and for this one, really enamored with the idea of a Gripply monk leaping from creature to creature, controlling the battlefield and moving your opponents wherever you so desire. So we're going to be taking the Gripply Ancestry, aiming for at level 9 that ricocheting leap feat, allowing us to leap between our enemies and shove or trip them as we do so. Obviously, we're going to be taking the Monk class, letting us get Knockback Strike at level 10 and Improvement Knockback at level 12, which means our shoves are more frequent, more reliable, farther, and deal anywhere between 10 and 15 bludgeoning damage whenever we knock someone into an obstacle. Unfortunately, these feats aren't available until level 10 and level 12, so in the meantime, I'm probably going to pick up Staff Acrobat, assuming my GM allows it, which lets me use a staff and really lean into that battlefield control with my weapon, making sure that as long as I have my staff in hand, I can really make sure that my opponents are going where I want them to go. Of course, monks normally are unarmed combatants, so for this to work, I'm also going to need to pick up monastic weaponry at level 1, which allows us to use weapons that have the monk trait in place of any feat or features that the monk has that require unarmed strikes, like their classic flurry of blows. Luckily, the bow staff, which qualifies for the staff acrobat dedication, is a monk weapon, so we have an easy access to something that allows us to simultaneously be a monk and benefit from all the cool monk things we can do, and still take advantage of all the staff acrobat feats that we'll be picking up. So that's what we have for the shove action. While it is probably not as ubiquitously useful as grapple or trip, I think this shove action still has quite a few use cases that make it a good action to invest into in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Notably, unlike grapple and trip, creatures will have a much harder time continuing to attack you without first spending action if you manage to shove them. Trip, obviously, they have to stand up or suffer a -2 penalty to attack, but grapple, unless you critically succeed that grapple check and actually restrain your opponent, doesn't stop them from making melee attacks against you. Shove, however, assuming they don't have a reach weapon, can knock them back 5 feet, and they'll have to spend an action to step or stride back up to you in order to continue attacking you. And if you're a monk, you can shove and then spend your action to move 30 or 40 feet away, which is likely going to be more than the move speed of other creatures, so they're going to have to spend multiple actions to catch up to you, allowing you to somewhat effectively kite them around the battlefield without too much worry. Obviously, the other use cases of shove, like shoving people off of cliffs, are still there, but I think it's important to remember that even just shoving someone 5 feet back and making them spend an action to step back up to you can be a good use of your action in PF2 because of the 3-action economy. So that's all for this video. Thank you everyone for watching, and next time we're going to cover the last of the 4 of this section, and probably the weakest one of the lot, which is going to be disarm. So I hope you come back and see what I can figure out what to do with that. And until next time, I hope you have a lovely day.